We've had 3 live-action versions of Spider-Man so far, and so far we've seen limited success. I'll do a quick summary of each rendition to get my pesky opinions out of the way. Tobey Maguire's variant is a great Peter Parker and okay Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield's variant is an okay Peter Parker and great Spider-Man. Tom Holland's variant is an okay Peter Parker and an okay Iron Man Jr. Nothing too surprising or controversial there. But we're not talking about those Spider-Boys. We're talking about the 4th in line. Because Sony is currently clumsily building up their own universe full of all sorts of wacky characters. But said characters happen to all revolve around one who's notably missing. Spoderman. If Sony is going to make a bunch of movies in the Spider-Man universe, they need a Spider-Man for things to revolve around. Now, I don't know if there's a rights thing preventing them from making their own, or the lack is from a hesitation to go toe-to-toe with Disney, but so far they've got nothing in the works. Lucky for you, I do not fear Disney or the law. So in this video, we're going to see what a 4th Spider-Man could look like, and outline a short pitch of how their story could go. Let's swing on in. Get it? Because... So here's my pitch. Sony's Spider-Man should be... Silk.
You what?
Now, before you click off, hear me out. At this point in his illustrious career, Peter Parker has starred in 8 movies. We've seen him pretend to be a high schooler, we've seen him snap a girl's neck, we've seen him pretend to be Iron Man. And we're gonna see him in the MCU doing whatever, presumably. So I think it's time for someone else to strut their stuff. And yeah, there's your boy Miles Morales, but Miles works best when he is taking up the mantle after Peter. A large part of his characterization is filling in Peter's shoes, so having him come first would be a major shift in his characterization. So, for this pitch, we're gonna go with Cindy Moon, aka Silk. Cindy is one of the many spider characters that show up for a little while and then kinda just fade into the background. She's noteworthy enough that we can get away with giving her a movie, while also not being so noteworthy that messing up said movie will piss off a substantial amount of people. And yes, I know that Sony was planning a TV show around Silk, but cancelled it. Well, good. Cause now they can do this movie instead. I mean, if they're handing out films to dummies like Craven and Madam Web, why not? Anyway, let's get into Cindy's powers and origin, then we can get into what stories to tell with her. Powers first. Cindy has what you'd expect. Super strength, super speed, sticky hands. But she's a little different than Peter Parker. She can make organic webbing from her fingertips, so she doesn't need web shooters. She's also weaker than Peter, but noticeably faster. And she has an improved spider sense that is more sensitive and expansive than his. So in a nutshell, she's similar enough to Pete for audiences to understand her intuitively, without being so similar as to be a repeat. Get it? Repeat? Repeat? Now for her origin. Long story short, Cindy gets her powers from the same spider that bites Peter Parker. It bites him first, then her, then dives like a loser. But here's where our story is gonna diverge. Cause in my version, the spider will land on Peter, but Cindy will knock it off. In the process though, it bites her, giving her powers and Peter nothing. This will have a ripple effect on Cindy's world and story. In the comics, she's basically tossed into a bunker after being bitten and kept away from the world for years, then broken out later by Peter so that the writer can explore their barely disguised fetish.
You weird, buddy. You're weird.
We're scrapping all that. For our version of the story, I'd like to age up the spider bite from happening when Cindy is in high school to when she's a college freshman. Double points since this gives Cindy more freedom, plus I'm sick of shows and movies set in high school. Instead of Peter Parker being a superhero in this version, he's her best friend and her man in the chair. She'll make her powers known to him almost immediately, making the pair a 1-2 punch of superhero and sidekick. This Pete will also be more of a genius than the others, cause he's not distracted by superheroing. He's the brains, Cindy's the brawn. As for the rest of the show's cast, let's breeze through them. Cindy's dad is dead cause we don't need him. Her mom is a premier scientist, let's say at Alchemax. She's a workaholic who has a somewhat distant relationship with Cindy, since her daughter takes more after her dad. Lots of room for juicy emotional scenes and development there. As for Cindy's romance interest, And yes, she has a romance because all superheroes are forced to have one. We can give her a generically attractive guy. Let's say Flash Thompson. This version of Flash can be a firefighter or paramedic. That way he interacts with Cindy in her civilian life, and while she's out superheroing as Silk. Flash will fall for both of them, but it'd be cool if he ultimately rejected Silk in favor of Cindy. Now for the actual movies. Let's go one by one with super brief summaries, because I envision Silk's story as a trilogy. For the first movie, we'd obviously see Silk's origin and the beginnings of her superhero career. I'd like for the villain of this movie to be Silver Sable. In a nutshell, she's a rich lady who's good at fighting and hunting and shooting. Hey, wait a minute. Sable is hunting Silk because she perceives her to be a threat. See, this version of Sable will realize that Silk's modified DNA has turned her into a kind of beacon. A beacon that could attract unwanted attention from entities Sable has studied, and some she has faced. Comic book fans, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, after some punchies, Silk manages to convince Sable to stop her hunt, turning her into an ally instead of an enemy. But Sable vows to monitor Cindy in case things ever go south. Movie 2. Guess what time it is? Guess.
It's Morbin time.
Yeah, you already know who it is. Remember how I said Silk is like a genetic beacon? Well, the first thing she attracts is everyone's favorite living vampire, Morbius. Our second movie will be Silk vs. Morbius as he tries to hunt her down and suck her dry.
What did he say?
Morbius can win the punch-off, but I think it'd be cool for Cindy to talk him down and convince him to let her and Peter help him. Noticing a trend here? After the battle, Peter and Morbius can work together to suppress the latter's hunger by using science. I will not elaborate on how, but Mr. Morb is part of the squad now, so on to movie 3. The final movie in our trilogy will be about the arrival of the villain we've been building up to, Morlun. To sidetrack, Morlun is an interdimensional soul vampire that hops from universe to universe, feeding on Spider-Man, women, children, and pigs. And he's come to this universe to do the same to Cindy. This film will feature the battle between Cindy and Morlun, and it'll take everything for her and her allies, Peter Parker, Silver Sable, and Morbius, to win. There's no talking Morlun down either, so it's to the death. Cindy will still come out on top, but our beloved Morbius will die here. Unless he's popular enough, I guess, and the execs don't allow it. But either way, that'll be the end of Cindy's story. For now. My hope is that instead of trying to retread old ground, Silk's story would be one that does something different. Because I don't like the idea of Peter Parker being at the heart of a mystical, totemic story. But I'm fine with alternate variants of him, or in this case, a variant of Cindy Moon, exploring that supernatural side. In doing so, we fundamentally explore new ground with this character, creating new stories, while also highlighting clear differences between Cindy and Peter that can be retrofitted back into the comics. As displayed in the summary, my version of Cindy has a knack for talking down her villains, whereas Peter's in the movies often accidentally kill themselves. Cindy is built different, and her movies should be too. The beauty of this idea and character is that neither are beholden to one trilogy. If there's ever a Spider-Verse event, Cindy can show up. If there's some more multiverse shenanigans with a Spider-Man 5 to 10 years down the line, Cindy can be there. If Sony has a Sinister Six movie or a Kraven sequel, or does some sort of Spider-Man 2099 crossover, Cindy can be there. Since she's at the center of this universe, she can be its face. Cause that is one of the many problems plaguing the Sony universe. And though it's absolutely not even close to the worst of what's bad, it is noteworthy enough that it must be addressed. Sony needs a core for their universe to revolve around. A focal point that can drive their overall narrative, as well as a starting point that can weave into other spin-offs. Give Silver Sable her own movie. Do a spin-off where Flash Thompson becomes Agent Venom. Give Morbius a sequel. Please give Morbius a sequel. The only reason the first one flopped is because we were all busy that day, but we're free now. Making Cindy the face of this Sony universe can help it stand out. Because we've watched Peter so many times now, and we will watch him for the foreseeable future. Seeing someone new will not only bring in fresh audience members, but will also boost the rep of a character that was done dirty in the comics. So it's a win-win. By the way, I know what you're thinking. This is all optimistic idealism, but we live in a society, and that society is the same one that burped out Madam Web. What if this Silk project ends up the same? What if it ends up even worse? And you know what I say to that? Don't threaten me with a good time, buddy. That's it for this one. Like and subscribe, because I've got plenty more video essays, movie rewrites, and series fixes on the way. And until the next one, cheers.